Download Whiskey Hell Podcast. We call attention to the mainstream media narratives weekly in hopes that you'll have fun with how ridiculous the news really is. We don't want to change your mind. We just want to give you perspective so that you can choose more wisely and be more aware. Couple that with great craft beer, hilarious stories, deep thoughts, and real conversations. We know you're going to enjoy it. Download Whiskey Hell Podcast anywhere you find outstanding shows.
Take my eyes open to force reality. No. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? Hush.
Okay, welcome everybody. We are now on episode 4. I'm back after, taking more time away as I promised I wouldn't. But hey, life happens and you get busy. But here's a special treat. I'm often, or occasionally anyway, a co-host on Stretchgoose Podcast with my brother Manuel, and today he is here with me on my podcast, which is great. He gets to be a guest and not have to push any buttons. So
yes,
he gets to sit there and relax and kick back.
I don't get to touch the toys.
Doesn't get to touch the toys in my office. Hell no.
Because I'll fuck shit up.
Because I'm sure you've all heard the last time I was on there, or well, not the very last, but one of them where there were some technical issues.
And it went live anyway. I didn't give a fuck. That's how my show goes.
Which is fun. But before we dive into that, let me get a little sponsor plug in here before we go too much further. For your enjoyment, because, bills got to get paid. We are brought to you by Fontes Pro Sound and Light, also known as FPSL. FPSL provides event production services for both corporate and special events, backed by over 2 decades of experience and specialized training. Find out what FPSL can do for your next event by going to fontesprosound.com. That's FONTES prosound.com. You can also reach them at 833-377-5303. FPSL is not just AV. FPSL is your mission critical event partner. Okay, and usually I'll just do those later in post-production, but I just thought I'd make my brother sit through that. At the same time, I'm going to give him an opportunity to plug his show, so
Don't
why
do
not?
it. Don't do it.
You got to do it. Got to do it.
Me too?
You too. Let's do this.
Son of a bitch. It's the Stretchgoose Podcast. That's what I have. It's political news, commentary stuff.
So if you like what you hear here, folks, and you like what we're doing, go ahead and hear me and my brother on his show, the Stretchgoose Podcast.
I'm
you
sorry.
can pretty much hear that on, almost everywhere, huh?
Oh, yeah, at this point, yeah.
Yeah, and recently I've heard picked up listeners up in, where was that, Canada?
The great country of Canada.
A few other, it's growing a lot, but you've been doing it for like 7-something years, right? So
Yeah, but only seriously for like a year and a half.
Yeah, still.
So those first few years were just a lot of experimentation, a lot of failure. And I finally got a little niche going, got a few thousand downloads. I'm pressing on.
So that's going to lead us to where I'm going to go with the show, but
before you
sure,
before you fly
what you got?
in, I want to apologize for my version of a plug because I've never had to plug my show. I know I crashed that plane. I
just put you on the spot and wanted to see what happened.
and that fucking
honestly,
shit, that house was on fire quickly.
That's okay. I just want to see how you handled it. But no, seriously, go ahead and hear us on the Stretchgoose Podcast. Again, I'm there kind of like a part-time co-host, and but my brother has a lot of great points, great show. Definitely check that out. And his reach is pretty big right now. So if you haven't heard it, don't know what rock you're hiding under. Where I was going to go with that, though, 7 years or so, you said last few years, is when you took it serious. But to be quite honest, there's a theme here, which is dig your heels in and put the work in, and things will come, right? And we were having a conversation earlier about a few things, especially seems to be the dislike or hatred for the boomer generation, or seems like anybody who is let's just say who looks old. And we're going to get into that in a bit. But before we go there, this is a little related in terms of how people are feeling these days. Anyway, check yourself, because I've been finding, and I looked up, actually did a lot of research and looking up on this because I was wondering. I heard one day forgot what I was listening to, that procrastination is actually a sign that you may be depressed. And that was an interesting thing, and I thought I'd bring that up and share that because if you are procrastinating, for example, I'm going to go to the Merriam-Webster, good old, hey, this is what procrastination means. So let's go to the dictionary. It's basically to put off intentionally and habitually. So why would we intentionally put something off and even make a habit of putting something off? And according to Psychology Today and other papers and whatnot that have to do with psychology, it's been cited many times that, for example, there's a lot of points here. But let's go to point number 3. It says, when people are depressed, it can be hard for them to plan out a sequence of behavior. For instance, if you need grocery shop, meal prep, declutter your house, or sort out debt, you may feel intimidated about where to start. Planning out multiple step tasks can feel overwhelming when your mind is foggy due to depression. So that's an interesting statement there because it really leads to, well, if you're putting those things off and you can't plan or put things together, you're basically, by definition, procrastinating. You don't want to handle it and you don't want to deal with things head on. And so you procrastinate. And what I found with procrastination, because I'm guilty of this as well, is you'll tend to get in a state of, I don't feel like it. I'll put it off. I can do it tomorrow. Or even get to the point where you just don't want to do anything at all. You'll talk yourself out of a major task that needs to get done, which could lead all the way to how it affects your work and your relationships. So ask yourself, if you're procrastinating, why? What's the reason behind it? I mean, we're all going to avoid things here and there. I could procrastinate on digging freaking forms out to pour concrete because who wants to do that in 110-degree weather, for example?
Nobody wants to.
Exactly. But I don't think that's what this is talking about. This is talking about every day you have an excuse as to why I don't want to do this or that. For example, you don't want to go to work. Nobody wants to go to work. But you don't want to achieve a task at work. And then all of a sudden you don't want to achieve another task. And then you don't want to clean your house. And I mean, it could just bleed into other areas of your life. So be very careful. If you find yourself constantly procrastinating, maybe it's time to evaluate the reason why you are doing so. Do you not feel any value in yourself? Do you feel like maybe no matter what you do, it doesn't make a difference? These are signs of depression, and maybe you need to talk to somebody about this. Well, a qualified individual anyway. Because
don't talk to us.
Yeah, there's a lot of armchair psychologists such as myself.
Yeah, we are not. We did not go to the school.
But it's also about, for example, here's another point. Procrastination can also be due to or lead to anxiety, for example. And if you're constantly anxious and putting things off, what I'm getting at, it does have it's very eerily apparent that procrastination and depression are linked. And if you're feeling down, but you also find yourself constantly putting things off, you may want to go ahead and talk to somebody and see if you can get your shit sorted out, because depression is a downward spiral that you're just not going to get yourself out of. It's like when you push the snowball downhill, start small, and then by the time it gets to the end, you got this giant boulder-sized snowball that's just going to basically bury everything, and that's not where you want to be. And so that's what we have to say about that. And kind of related, here we go with our next topic. We wanted to talk about the hate for boomers. Do people hate boomers, and why? Why is there such a disdain with the younger generations to hate those, not just from the boomer generation, but those who apparently just look like they're old in general? Even people like myself in my 40s, all of a sudden, I'm considered a boomer.
Well, it's our parents, right?
Yeah,
technically.
Well, so basically, we'll just touch on what the generations are. For example, I was going to go on the younger. I didn't even look up boomers. So basically, the boomers are before Gen X. So boomers are born between, early 40s to 1964, correct?
I think it's the late 40s to 60s.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
And then a Gen Xer is technically the years of 1965 to 1980. So if you're born within that time, you're a Gen Xer. Millennials are basically 1981 to 1996, and Gen Z were born somewhere in the 90s, mid 90s to the 2010s or so.
So we're Gen Xers. Yeah.
We are absolutely Gen Xers.
God
We're the
damn it.
people that are kind of like love and hate at the same time. But I like being a Gen X because here's the deal with Gen X. We got to see
Everything.
the development of technology rapidly advance. I'm talking internet, phones, you name it.
Computers, video games.
And we could reach back enough to remember how to dial a phone. Like the rotodial ones, you put your finger in there and you fucking, the circle goes around.
Yep. Call collect. Anybody?
So we got a little bit of that transitional technological advancement, which to me is great because you get to appreciate what is going on in technology. And maybe we're getting to the point where it's advancing so fast that even we can't keep up with it. But at least we have a great understanding. So I don't think there's ever going to be a generation like ours for some time. It's going to happen because there's going to be another great advancement. But
right now is AI, right? So we're also going to swing in on that as a Gen
we're
Xer.
experiencing that as well.
Yeah,
But let's get down to, so why millennials and Gen Z in particular?
Why do they hate our guts?
Well, not necessarily just hate Gen X, but they really have a problem with the baby boomers. And the baby boomers were born post-World War
They were born right after World War II.
II. Yeah. Post-World War II.
Yeah.
And they always have so much to say about them, and they have so much hatred toward them. And, there's an old saying, always respect your elders. I do to a degree. I think age should be respected, but I also believe that respecting the person goes both ways, regardless of age. You're going to get what you put out. So we got a little video. We got a few videos here, which kind of really, it's basically the pulse of what's going on here.
Generation is so out of touch with what
Somebody
the going
hit
rate
their
for
wheel.
everything.
I did.
I visited my
I'm
parents
going to
for
go
the
ahead and
first
start that
Generation
over.
is so out of touch with what the going rate for everything.
I visited my parents for the first time in about 3 years over the holidays, and they sat me down really seriously and told me that my grandmother had set aside some money for me, and it was supposed to be for, a big moment in my life, like when I got married or bought a house. They said that when she passed away, she had kind of told them specifically that she wanted the money to go towards like a significant moment in my life to be kind of like a help to me. Now, I got married over the pandemic, and as most people my age know, I'm not going to be buying a house anytime soon, even with my partner. So they were kind of debating, like, as they were sitting down, whether or not they should give me the money or if they should wait because it was supposed to be for, like, something important. Now, I'm sitting here like, okay, how much money are we talking about? Because if it's a significant amount of money, then maybe I can plan for something in the future, plan for a big step like this. So I was like, how much money are we talking? And guess how much money they were talking about after sitting there like debating in front of me whether or not to give it to me, whether or not it was going to help with my eventual purchase of a house. Guess how much money they were talking about? $1,500. My plane ticket to visit them cost $1,000. It cost me $300 to ship the Christmas gifts they got me back to my house. And they were debating over giving me $1,500 because it might help me buy a house.
Generation is so out of touch.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll edit that other stuff out, I'm sure.
No, that was fine. It's what it is. So that was from Andy Astra from TikTok. And this lady has about 1.5 million followers, I believe.
The 1.5 million people liked that piece of shit.
Well, I don't TikTok. Regardless.
40,000 bookmarked that fucker, and 28,000 said
Commented.
some shit. Yeah.
Almost 29,000. Almost. So,
Well, most of them largely agreeing with her, which is sad.
well, what's sad is not the fact that, okay, I can understand the amount, but to say that boomers are out of touch is ridiculous because if we really listen to this video, I think this video represents how out of touch the younger generation is with what's really going on and how they really don't appreciate anything. Sure, 1,500 isn't really a lot these days, but you're talking about your grandmother. Okay, baby boomers are your grandparents now. Most grandparents got to the point where not everyone got the pension, by the way, like they think. They think everyone in the boomer age worked a union job, got a fucking pension for life. No, not everybody fell into that. Not everybody got that. Not everybody made investments like they think they did. And then when they get older, their costs are fixed. For example, a lot of them talk about how they bought houses for cheap. Well, what they don't understand with housing and buying housing and property is that, yeah, they may have bought it for cheap and they based their budget around their expenses at the time. They paid their house off, but guess what happened? Their property taxes went up as they were appreciated. So today, that old grandmother or grandfather who paid their house off now has to still deal with a $2,000 to $3,000 monthly payment because of property taxes. So they're still having to pay out of their pocket, and they're doing it on a fixed income because maybe their 401k ran out. Maybe they're just living on Social Security, which is not very much money. I think it maxes out at $2,200, $2,400 a month, something like that.
Yeah, depending on how much service you gave, yeah.
So if they had a $3,000 tax bill a month, or let's just say $2,000, and they're only getting $2,400, they got $400 left, and then they still have to pay their utilities and whatnot. They may be on Medicare, so they're technically, most of the insurance is covered in terms of health. But if they don't have that for whatever reason, they have to pay that out of pocket. Now, young generation, have you even stopped to look at how much healthcare is these days? It's as much as a house payment as you get older. Now you're paying $1,500 to $2,400 a month for healthcare. So let's say property tax now for them went up to $1,500 a month. They're now paying $1,500 a month in health insurance. They got a $3,000 a month bill on a fixed income that they're probably only getting $2,400, maybe $3,000 total. All their money's gone. And this lady, this young girl, is complaining and basically putting her grandmother down for saving as much as she could to give her $1,500, which to the grandmother, I'm sure, was probably a lot of money, because how much was she able to put away every month? $10, $20, $30? She was thinking of her.
It depends, yeah. It depends. Well, all right. What's more egregious about this shit, about these fucking yodels, is they don't. You work to support the elderly, and those elderly people work to support those elderly.
In most other cultures, correct?
Usually.
Yeah.
And in America, we try to do that through Social Security, Medicaid, and all that, hoping that the young people are working. But now the young people don't want to even fucking do that. So we're at this part of where all of this stuff is running out of money. They keep saying 10, 15 years. We'll see. That's why I hope we privatize it to where those payments can gain interest or whatever, so that we can somewhat keep it going. But the youth don't want to do that shit either, because it's, too taxing on their fucking soul or whatever. Obviously, I mean, they're like, well, since I'm closer to the boomer, in terms of the birth years and
shit. Or the
shit.
generation after.
Right. And I'm the one that is going to defend the boomer here. It's like, we're not and I'm a part of it, so we're not out of touch with how much shit costs. We see it every day when we're in the grocery store. We see it every day when we put, gas. We see it when we go to the fucking car lot and we have to buy something. None of us are oblivious to how much shit costs. And that's the bulk of what she's saying. And that's not even remotely true. We know.
I understand that's what she's saying, and you're correct. I just want to point out how their generation, I don't know what she looks like, Gen Zer, maybe?
She's probably in the millennial or the Z.
She's not, or the tail end of the millennial, right?
Right.
She's saying boomers are out of touch because a grandmother scrounged $1,500 together to give her. So a boomer's out of touch, and she felt offended by the fact that a grandmother was even trying to give her $1,500.
But that's because she's fucking retarded.
Okay. So why is there the hatred for the older generation? Why are you expecting that your grandmother should have been able to save up $10,000, $20,000, $50,000? And why would you expect that is the amount you would have gotten? So I think I'm a little appalled at how that person is acting, because you're correct. Look, boomers are still alive. Their heyday is what it was, but they lived through the recession. They're living through the economic times now. They're on fixed income. So how do you think they're out of touch when, like you just said, they're dealing with exactly what they are?
Yeah, they're staring at the same shit. And yeah, the house back then might have been $40,000.
Might have been 30. Yeah, because a lot of them were 35, 40, maybe
100
70,000 was high back then, correct?
Maybe $100,000 is you're going for broke here, but back
Maybe
at
in
that
the
time.
80s or so, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they were running tight on money. It doesn't mean that they were just, it just felt, there were buckets of cash running around.
Yeah.
You have none
true.
of them were alive to understand the economic hardships of the 60s, the 70s, especially the 70s when you go Jimmy Carter. That fucking bullshit.
True.
The downturn in the early 80s until Reaganomics or whatever. They weren't around for that, so they don't understand the hardship that they went through to save that money to build those. These fuckers are calling them empires.
They didn't go through it.
No,
But they're living through the same exact situations that
how
these
are-
millennials and Gen Zers have gone
right.
through.
And how are these retards handling it?
And yet, the story here is an old grandmother was still able to save something to give
Yeah.
this person who, I'm sure the grandmother was on a very fixed income.
If I was her dad, I would have said, "Fuck you, then go away." I would have took the money and put it back in the pocket.
Oh, so boomers are out of touch. It sounds like these younger generations are out of touch with society and the world in general.
Yeah.
So here's another one here. I forgot what this person was talking about, but we bookmarked it because, again, this is just a pulse of how things are with the younger generation. I think this one is a Gen Zer, actually. Yeah, she's a Gen Zer. She looks, and it actually says she is. So let's hear what this person has to say about boomers, or basically just people who are older than them now, right?
Why do boomers hate young people so much?
Because their entire identity is wrapped up in their productivity. They only see their personal value as being tied to the hard work, right? So when you point out
Because it
that
matters.
they didn't have to work as hard to get things as we do, they see that as an attack on who they are as a person because they don't have any identity outside of how hard they worked. Also, they just don't have a frame of reference for it because when they were kids, you had to actively mess up in order to not be basically successful. As long as you had a full-time job working somewhere, you would be able to buy a house. And your measure of success was how nice of a house you had. It was just assumed that you would be able to buy a house.
How does she fucking
when they
know
see
that?
people like us who don't have houses,
talk
they
about it.
assume that it's because we've made mistakes and we're just slacking and we're not trying hard enough because they have no frame of reference for an America where you can work 80 hours a week and still not have enough money to pay rent. They cannot conceive of that because it just didn't exist when they were kids. Also, the heavy metal poisoning. They were exposed to a lot of heavy
I'm gonna need
metals
some
with
data on
leaded
that one.
gas, and lead was just
I'm just going to stop this idiot.
Yeah, I need some on number 3, the poisoning. I need some data that the boomers are all poisoned.
Exactly. So this person, Loke Rants, Loke_Rants, LOC. Oh, so this one had about 100,000 likes. All right. So Gen Zer, I will describe this person. I don't care if you want to cancel me, but basically half shave head,
It's
blue on the other side.
yeah, some teal there.
Doesn't mean this person's an idiot because I'm not trying to say they are, but they basically just came out as an idiot by speaking. This is a very assumptive rant. Number one, she's too young to even know what a boomer went through because she wasn't even alive to even judge a boomer or anyone from that generation and how they got where they were. I don't care what generation you're in. Anyone who built an empire or a business had to put the work in and had to sacrifice to do so. It doesn't matter what time it was. It's harder in some eras than others, right?
Right.
But it just doesn't happen. This person's assuming that if you just decide one day, I'm going to open a law firm, that it's just going to suddenly be successful.
Yeah.
That's
And
her
that-
assumption, right?
that's-
Basically.
that was her assumption
Okay.
when she was saying you have to actively mess up back then.
So she's saying that they have no frame of reference, yet this person themselves has no frame of reference because they weren't even alive. Gen Zers were born in the mid-90s. What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't. Okay.
How is a Gen Zer going to judge what boomers went through when you weren't even fucking alive?
Let's just be real. Labor, if that's their identity, that's a good. That's
Oh,
a good.
good one. Go for it.
That's
I
a
was
good-
going to bring that up.
That's a good fucking identity to have. You know what? It's better than having half a shaven head and a teal fucking hairdo.
Again,
and sitting there pissing and moaning in your break room about how hard life is.
not trying to be too insulting, but the reality is, I mean,
She's fucking.
I hear you, right? Labor's their identity.
Yeah, it is their identity, and
So
God bless them.
And that's why they're out of touch, because labor is their identity. No, is it labor are their identity, or the fruits of their labor are their identity?
How about
Basically, if you put the work in, you achieve something and build something, and that is their identity. Not the fact that just that they worked. The problem is with the Gen Zers, most, and I can speak to this because guess what? I'm alive in your time, and I see it and experience it, is that they want to basically just suddenly be famous or rich just for existing.
And yes,
They want to apply for a job and automatically make 200 and something thousand a year. And if they're not offered that, they're going to turn down every other offer before that.
you know what? Another thing I hate is in some of these videos that they say they deserve the money. For what the fuck are you talking
And
about?
let me say something. She can say that I'm out of touch by saying that, but I have a frame of reference. I'm an employer. I've tried to hire people. I've offered salaries. They still won't take it, no matter what it is. So I'm living in your time. So
Yeah.
I have a frame of reference, right? So
Right.
do you. As far as labor is their identity, no, the labor wasn't the identity. It was what came out of the labor, what they put into it, what they built is the identity. I know exactly what that means. So do you, right? This lady's talking in the break room. She doesn't have anything yet except for her TikTok, which she's building. So her identity is what? The fruits of her labor.
Right.
Same shit, idiot.
Yeah.
You're trying to build your TikTok so you could be famous and make money off sponsorships. So your identity is based on what? Your work, i.e. labor. So what the fuck are you talking about? And then the heavy metal poisoning, listen, she's just insulting people at that point. She's calling everyone dumb. That's all she's doing.
Their IQ's dropped with the lead. Yeah, I get it.
So we went a little hard on that, but the reality is I'm not just trying to be reaction. We're not just trying to have reactions to videos. What we're trying to do is explain, look, these younger generations hate boomers for whatever reason. And a boomer is now being defined as anyone who basically is older than them. Look, if they're born in the 90s to 2010s and we're born in the 70s and
80s,
early 80s,
we're in that class.
we're
now.
the old people now.
Yeah.
So now they're calling us boomers. They say that people like me and before me are out of touch, but they're just, sounds like everyone is just whining because they're jealous that they didn't end up with what their grandparent may have worked for and ended up with.
But that's just sheer laziness, though.
We can say it's laziness, but it goes back to what we asked
yes,
earlier.
It is. Sorry.
Who
go ahead.
is really out of touch, though?
They are by a fucking mile. It's like when she makes that stupid reference about working 80 hours a week and can't pay her rent. That is a you problem. That's not a boomer problem.
No. And
Yeah.
let me tell you something.
I
If
mean-
you're a business owner, I'm working more than 80 hours a week.
But I mean, the insinuation is I'm working 2 full-time jobs. I can't
No,
pay
understood.
my bills.
I get it.
That's a you problem.
I get it.
You got to figure out what to cut and what to keep. And I mean, that's kind of the reference in one of my episodes about everybody wants the same gold toilet. It just doesn't work.
It is a you problem, but I'm going to play the advocate for this Gen Zer because, in terms of what you just said, because there is a thing going on where everybody has a degree mostly. You can't even get out of college and get it. I mean, you can't even get a job without coming out of college with a degree. You can go to college and come out, but you have to have that degree
Yeah.
to even be considered. But now the playing field is pretty much even. So how are you standing out to get a job if everyone has a degree? Guess what? You're going to have to put the work in to make yourself look like someone that they need to hire
No one's hiring
based on your
that.
skills and ability.
I'm sorry, no one's hiring that fucking hairdo. I'm sorry. I mean, she's gonna have to change who she is, and has some hard choices.
Well, this person is basically trying to build a social media career.
Yeah,
Um,
everybody's trying to build a social media career.
Right.
Nobody wants to be a plumber. Nobody wants to fucking build houses anymore.
So the work of the previous generations, which were hands-on jobs, is basically the jobs that these Gen Zers don't want to take.
Yeah, because they're hard.
And millennials did not want to take. Now, I know I'm generalizing. That may not be every single person from that generation, but at the same time, the Gen Zers more and the millennials are being very generalizing as well when it comes to people from our generation and from the boomer generation. you're right. Their situation is a you problem.
Yeah, it's choices.
I'm sorry it's fucking hard. Listen, we're all going through it. We're live at the same time you were. You went through the pandemic. We went through the pandemic.
Yeah.
The Great Recession. You were barely old enough to even fucking know what it was. You're barely being bored. Guess what? We went through it.
And unlike most of this generation that was afraid of getting sick, I didn't take a day off. I went to work.
You're right.
I
all
was
went to
around
work sick
everybody, coughing, sneezing, whatever. A lot of medical people were too.
because we didn't have the option.
No, we were considered essential
Exactly.
in our fields. So, I guess it's a you problem. I'm sorry. I don't want to. It reminds me of I don't know if we got enough time on your deal on your show for this, but it reminds me of.
We have as much time as you want. You're the guest.
Oh shit! I never had this before. It just reminds me of watching that Obama's working Netflix shit. Or,
Oh yeah, that docu-series that came out.
Yeah, he's highlighting different jobs. and
Basically
stuff.
people who work regular or average jobs, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and most of them are food service, whatever. Anyway, this one girl on that show was a dentist person, right? She blows out her knee in some kind of sport, and suddenly it's too painful to sit in the chair. So she quits that job. We're talking about a 6-figure job. Her next,
She was a dental assistant.
yeah,
Got it.
and her choice. This is all what I'm saying about choices. And she's from this generation. Her choice was makeup. She loved doing makeup. She wanted to be a social media makeup-y person. And to support that, she decided to sit in a car with a bended knee for 12 hours or more as an Uber driver and a delivery driver for food. It's kind of like, what's my thing when I watch this? Like, what? You're a fucking moron.
Okay.
Your knee hurted there for 6 figures. You could have used that money to support your shit.
Right.
So you rather take the knee pain and work for
And
50.
what generation was this lady from?
She's the millennial.
She was a millennial. So very funny. They cry how hard it is. And a lot of people in these generations are about, well, I don't feel good in the job. I'm not getting rewarded from it. But then you complain when things are hard financially. Listen, life is fucking hard.
Yeah.
Our society, unfortunately, even before my generation and before the boomer generation, was built on pay your fucking way. If you want a loaf of bread, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
If you need the money to pay for it, how are you going to do it? You exchange your services or goods for money. Services being the labor you offer or the goods you produce as a business. If you can't do either, you can't buy the bread.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And when you make a decision, because I'm glad you brought that. That was actually a good story. Because millennials and Gen Zers, more Gen Zers, are all about how they feel about the job, what they're getting out of it. And they complain that they're not making the money they want and the career that they chose because I feel good about making beaded necklaces. These are great. I make them by hand.
Right.
But goddamn, I am owed $1 million a year in income. Why am I not making $1 million a year? It's because the boomers fucked it up for me. No, it's because you chose to make fucking beaded necklaces. That's why.
It's just mind-boggling. It's because she wants to have this makeup career, but she's bitching about the funding. And I'm just thinking in my head the whole time watching this episode, is put a fucking knee brace on and go sit in the dental chair.
But this goes back to the question that I had and you had when we were talking earlier before we started the show was, why the hate for the boomers? Number one, why the hate for the older generations, and is there hatred or what's the other word for that? Let's call it hatred. It sounds like they'll hate. Is it justified? So they're complaining that we didn't get the financial opportunity. Oh, it was easy to buy a house back then. Oh, you didn't have to pay your way as much. Well, we already debunked that because boomers and our generation are living through the same shit that these people did. These people have no frame of reference because they weren't even born back then to even see what the boomers went through. Neither were we, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean.
So then they make decisions based on their feelings, how rewarded they feel. Like this example, a lady has a knee that hurts, gives up a 6-figure dental job because she couldn't sit. Well, guess what? If you're sitting in a chair, you can move your knee around. But she supported herself to be a makeup artist, right? Cosmetologist, whatever the fuck you call it.
However you call the makeup people.
By sitting in a car, delivering or doing Uber or DoorDash, something like that, which with a bended knee where they have to push a pedal, which further exaggerates the situation that they have with their knee. But that was acceptable, not
Yeah.
making the money. And then when the career that they chose based on their feelings didn't work out, they blame the generations before them.
Well, the knee still hurts. So what's the why?
I understand. I guess what I'm trying to highlight is the thought process and decision making of the younger generations. Sorry to be general about it, but there is a theme. Now, I will argue that millennials, many of them did work hard. They did. I think the Gen Zers are a little bit more out of touch with things than the millennials, but why are we always attacking generations? How and basically, how are the generations getting to the point now, millennials, Gen Zers, whatever's going to come next? Well, I don't know what's going to happen with the next generation, but why do they have this thought process that they're owed something? What do you think? Why is that?
They feel that they're entitled.
I mean, they're blaming everything from boomers to Ronald Reagan, as we looked up earlier, to the fucking stock market, Wall Street. I mean, guess what? I was fucked by Wall Street too. Many people in my generation, their 401ks went to shit.
Yeah, everybody lost their shirt in that run. Well, when you're saying is why do they feel entitled? I think it just has to do with. No, I mean I'm probably going to be off base here, but
It's
I think
an
it has.
opinion, though.
Yeah, I think it
I
has
ask your
to.
opinion.
I think it has to do with their parents. And I know when I had you on my show a couple times we talked about this, and I keep going back to this, but that's what I think it is. I think it is the parents,
Their upbringing.
the way they're bringing them up, where they're coddling them, they're handing them everything, they're telling them that, oh, I got that for you, can I have $50? Sure. And then they go to get a job and they realize they have to do shit. And then all of a sudden they start blaming the mom and the dad for not teaching them the right way. Then they blame the grandparents for not leaving them anything.
Yeah.
Because because those parents, which were the children of the generation, whatever that generation would be, I don't know if it's
That would be
X,
our generation.
Our
no?
generation. So we were brought up with the heavy hand, a little bit of the spanking, a lot of the cursing, taught hard lessons. And then we don't want to teach that to them because we don't want them to experience the pain and the suffering.
So maybe, I mean, you just said it. Maybe it is the Gen X our fault, right? Our generation's fault because we went through the like you said, the discipline.
Yeah.
And honestly, we weren't born in the best, economically great eras either. I mean, sure, the 80s had its time, but we were too young to really experience the 80s from an adult standpoint. And then by the time the 90s hit, there was some stuff. And then, the housing markets in the 2000s and the crash. And maybe it is our fault for wanting to not let them go through that. We wanted to, maybe our generation just wanted to give our kids the abundance and the leg up. And here you go. But through all of that emotional support and all the coddling, like you said, we forgot the one very important thing that all human beings need to succeed, and that is the challenge. Figuring shit out for yourself.
Yeah.
So we gave them the knowledge and the leg up, but we didn't give them the challenge.
Yeah.
Our generation didn't let them struggle. And so here they are now.
And now
just expecting things to happen.
Yeah, and now they're projecting back on back against us.
So is their hatred of boomers justified? Well, the boomers didn't really have anything to do with your Gen Zs and millennials. They were your grandparents if they were alive. So how did their grandparents fuck you up? You were raised by, I guess, my generation.
Well, I think they feel like fucked over because those grandparents usually, I say usually, but I don't know the percentages, would have money.
Well, and
so
I got a problem with that.
Left. I'm just saying that's the thought process. Like they have money, so therefore it should be left to me. Kind of like that $1,500 lady.
Yeah, I got a problem with that. To grow up and just automatically assume that you're going to inherit what your parents or grandparents work for. I mean, why? And then living your life as if you think you could just rely on that and you could just coast because, oh, I'm going to get this from my grandparent or my parent. That is some bullshit because I'm going to tell you what, man. If I worked hard to be rich and my kid turned out to be one of these fucking Gen Zers on TikTok talking shit and not doing anything with their lives,
Do I want my
I
shit?
guarantee you I'll spend my whole fucking fortune and that motherfucker won't get a penny because they chose their life.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even have, there's no gratitude
Absolutely
coming out
none.
of them or not. I mean, you walk across the bridge every day. How did it get there?
Well,
you should show some kind of gratitude, right? I mean,
and then we're talking. This is perfect because you just made a few statements about how they don't want to work, right?
they feel like it should just.
And I
fall.
made a few statements about it because they feel like, well, I don't want to work
should
here
just-
because I got to feel satisfaction out of my job.
Yeah.
And then the story about the person who gave up their 6-figure job to continue hurting themselves, by the way, by putting themselves in a position where they're going to continue hurting their
Yeah.
knee because they want to be a cosmetologist. It didn't pan out. And then they're pissed at the world and blaming, the generations before them for why they didn't succeed. You made a life choice. It didn't work out. Get over it. Move on. Do something better. So let's watch this lady. A lot of stuff from TikTok today, huh?
Hey, it's a place, man.
Okay. Millennial Crisis from Demi Coltseris. I can't say her name.
You enjoy that one.
But here we go. So, why millennials don't want to work anymore?
Older generations are so confused at why we don't want to work anymore, or why we don't necessarily want to work hard or prioritize our careers. We know how short life is now, and it didn't have to come from a life-changing, life-altering experience like it did for those before us. You know that older person in your life that had someone close to them pass away maybe when they were young, and they lived life to the fullest because of that? Now we have that access to that information. We also had this global panini that happened, so we view life way differently than we ever have before. So even for a lot of us, if we've got a workplace that is purpose driven and they've got great values and they're doing amazing work, we're still like, I want to travel, I want to do other stuff with my life. And that's also confusing for us because we're like, oh my God, we've got all this like privilege, like the work we're doing is great and all of this kind of stuff. Why am I still depressed? Why do I still hate my life? Why do I still not want to work? And it's because we don't place the same value that was drilled into us before on that. And so we shouldn't. The access to information has made us smarter.
So you're smarter
Who's gonna unclog the toilet?
based on the information that was drilled into you, but you just also in that same statement said, even though you know better, you're choosing not to work. Did any of that make any sense?
I got nothing on that one. I got nothing.
So we're confused why millennials don't want to work because we don't understand their struggle in not having job satisfaction, basically. Now, is it job satisfaction or is it that most people think that they can be a YouTube or TikTok star? Was that the boomers' fault? No. You know whose fault that was? I'm going to blame it on Bravo, the network. Why? Fucking Kardashians.
Fucking reality shit.
Reality TV. In fact, it goes before that. It goes to MTV, right? What was the first one? The Hills, or I don't know. Fuck it.
Doesn't matter. I know MTV Cribs.
Because
was
reality
also one.
TV glamorizes just waking up, putting makeup on, and drinking wine and champagne all day. And not doing any fucking thing to earn $1 outside of waking up, putting makeup on, dressing up, and drinking wine and champagne all day. That's all they're doing.
And cussing each other out and fighting in a bar.
So, was it the boomers' fault? Or is it society's fault as a whole? And that came out of the era of the millennials. You made that shit up. You taught yourselves to be that way. The boomers didn't. My generation didn't.
Yeah. That's, yeah.
You fucked yourself up. And now you have an opinion of the generations before you fucking your life because you think we financially or economically screwed America up for you.
I also think monetizing on social media has also screwed the planet.
Agreed. And that came later.
You should not be getting.
But that was more, Gen Zers, right? That was like late 90s, or actually more like early 2000s, right? Where that really started becoming a thing.
But the minute the word got out that, hey, you can make $1 posting dog shit on YouTube.
People are making money by literally just farting in a fucking microphone.
Yes,
Like, seriously.
and because of that, all of your millennials and your Gen Zers ran over there because they were like, "Oh, I can make 3,000-4,000 a month just, you know, saying dumb shit into a camera. Why the fuck do I want to go be a construction worker or go be a scientist somewhere? Why? I can just do this and I can get millions of people to stare at it. I get a couple $1,000. Why bother trying to do anything hard? I mean, the big guy is what, Mr. Beast with his 200 million followers. You go to his earliest videos, which got him started. That motherfucker is literally screaming at horror video games. And that's it. And all of a sudden, boom, 200 million followers. He's doing all these weird videos of, I'll give you 500 grand if you can stay in a room with a guy, all this dumb shit. And all the millennials and the Gen Zers and even some of our Xers have given him that platform.
So it's basically, here's the irony of everything. What you're saying, and where we are all getting this info as to how the millennials and the Gen Zers feel about Gen X and the Boomer generation. We're getting it all from social media, where all the millennials and Gen Zers are on social media trying to have a successful social media page in order to try to make money. So is it the boomers that fucked your shit up, or is it your skewed perception of how you're going to be successful that fucked you up? Because I know some people that are considered millennials or even Gen Zers who went to college, became, scientists and engineers, got a job doing so, and are making six figures. Yeah. But the majority are trying to make stupid videos on YouTube, trying to be Kardashian fucking 2, 3, 4.0, whatever it is now, because they've reinvented themselves I don't know how many times.
Yeah.
And they think that they can just talk shit, get a laugh, and become a millionaire.
I mean,
so they screwed their own generation up. Was it us? No. Was it the boomers? There was no fucking Facebook back then. What are you talking about? They did not teach you that to be successful, you just make a video, spend all your time every day making videos and putting makeup on in the mirror. The majority of the complaints are coming from people on social media who are trying to build their social media presence.
They're all grifting off each other. That video right there on that screen.
Yeah.
Nate, 4 minutes on what name for this fucking dog.
Exactly.
3.5 million likes. There are 3.5 million people that sat for 4 minutes to find out the dog's name. I think the failure
is not the generations before you. The failure, may have been our generation that failed you because obviously you were not educated correctly. The fact that your entertainment think of, like you just said, guess the name of a fucking dog.
Yes.
3.3 million likes or followers. I can't, I
don't
check.
4 minutes of this. And then right next to it is somebody cooking fried chicken for 3 million.
So is this so hate you? Okay.
I know we're slowly drifting off topic because
because we're finding more holes in their arguments.
It is almost hilarious at this point.
And it's not necessarily the things they're saying, it's the actions, right? And I feel like maybe we did fail the younger generations because they're obviously the education level is just not there.
No, it's not.
When your entertainment and the way you make money is by, I don't know. People must be stupid if they're feeding into the fact that I want to see what this dog's name is. I mean, if you're just doing it because you have downtime and you just want to laugh or something, great. But people are spending all day looking at stupid videos that are put out by stupid people. And maybe they're not so stupid. What do I know? They're making money off of it. Maybe I'm the idiot. Maybe I need to make dumb videos about...
there's 3 million idiots that thought that was amazing.
So the boomers that the millennials and Gen Zers keep blaming for their situation are not the cause of your problem. The cause of your problem is what your own generations did in trying to glamorize a very, very highly unachievable measure of success by becoming a social media star or a Kardashian 4.567 whatever. Oh, that's what the real issue is. We didn't do anything to you. The boomers didn't do anything to you. You guys fucked yourselves because you had to feel a certain way about what you did for a living. Guess what? Not everybody likes fucking mopping up shit, or sweeping a floor at a school. But you know why they did it? Because they paid their bills with it and they got a fucking retirement out of it. And you know what they did on the weekend? Drank their ass off, went fishing, went hunting, had time, went on vacations. They planned their life. Unfortunately, in America and everywhere now, you're going to have to come to the realization you got to work for what you want. And even if you're trying to build your social media presence, guess what? You still have to put the fucking work in to get there. And every day you got to wake up and do your recordings and do your production and put it out there because you have to keep feeding content or you get lost in, this big vast hole that we call the internet. So you think you're smarter and you think you're doing what you want, but you're still a slave to the system because you still have to work and you're not even fucking realizing or acknowledging it.
So I'm on board. That's all I'm going to say. I'm on board. There's just too many people trying to achieve something that very few people, it's a small percentage that actually get rich off this shit. And everybody's so focused on this type of shit that we're leaving the other stuff behind, and we're running out. There's not enough of the. I guess my point is to some of this is there's not enough people turning the wheel of production, to keep the elderly cared for or your child cared for, whatever. Everybody's so hyper focused on creating content, and 99% of it is dog shit. And I don't know. I don't want to take over the going on a rant. I'll just whoop. I don't want to like.
Well, you're giving your opinion on this thing, and so let's circle back.
I'm sorry, World Ablaze audience. I just
is the hatred or disdain for the boomer generation justified?
No.
Okay.
God no.
Is
no.
the disdain or hatred for our generation justified?
No.
We did probably not raise them correctly by, like you said, trying to be, here's everything. I don't want you to live like we did. Just please.
I don't want you to suffer like we did.
We didn't give them the challenge. We should have let them fucking fall, break their arm, figure it out, get in a fucking fight, see who wins. Those little things, as they may seem barbaric today and uncalled for in society, are kind of what build your character and make you who you are. You need a challenge. You need to know where you're at and how you can overcome situations so you can get where you want to go in life. So Gen Z, I'm sorry, but it's all about life choices. Millennials, half of you did pretty good. The other half just kind of sucked off the tit of social media and failed. And I'm sorry, but this is my opinion. I try to be objective as possible, but just through the 3 videos, I know is not an overall representation of things. It's just a small sampling. But believe me, this is not all the information we've ever seen or gathered.
No,
but we thought these were pretty good videos to go off of and give you an idea what's going on. So with that said, I think we've I don't know. You want to go ahead and end this? Let's go ahead and walk this thing out of here.
I think we've beaten the horse to death.
I think we beat the horse. And I think it's time for us to end the show. And we want to thank everybody and want you all to tune in to the next one. Hear us on the Stretchgoose Podcast and also hear my brother on the Father Son Podcast. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Redemption, honesty is a one-way game. navigate the house.